is Ladyada.
Hey everybody, we're going to start getting some engineering going on here at the desk of Ladyada. I'm Ladyada, this is my desk, it's where I do the engineering. With me is Mr. Ladyada, also known as the floating head of death. Floating head of death. Okay, so it's a Sunday night. We've been doing the Desk of Ladyada Maker to Market video series, and we're almost done. Next week is the last video, right?
Yep, next week is support.
Okay, so that's pretty exciting. And so we're broadcasting those on Saturday, but while we've been doing those, we've been taking a break from the more often updates from the engineering desk. It's also been really nice out, so we're going outside and
Yeah, we're going outside.
doing Pokemon and walking around instead of engineering, which is cool.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
You can check some of our escapades and more on Instagram.com/Adafruit.
Yeah.
And you can see some of the things we're up to. I posted up the video of you with your first, or I guess most memorable, red boxing area from Brookline,
Yeah.
Boston. And that wasn't the Cocot location, that was the red boxing location.
Cocot
right?
location was in Central Square.
Yeah.
Was a really good Cocot, but
Okay.
the New England telephone, then 9X payphone was right down the street, pretty handy. Okay, so I thought we would maybe catch up on some engineering. A lot of stuff's been going on.
Yeah.
But today we were having brunch and we were talking about pie fats, pea hats. I guess we call them fats. But basically,
Yeah.
the idea of like, okay, so the Pi Zero is actually we're getting more of them in stock, and so there's a lot more going up to customers, and there's all these custom versions of add-on boards that are not quite hats, and we'll talk about the difference between all of the the hats, plates, cobblers,
Yeah.
whatever. And so we thought like, oh, let's just design some, and then you even came up with a cute name for me.
Well, just to roll it back a bit, there was Arduino shields.
Yeah.
And those were kind of what people said like daughter cards were, back in the day. And then there were plates, which we called, when the Pi came out, we had some things called plates. And then when the Beaglebone came out, those were, what were they? What were they for Beagle?
Capes.
Capes. And then for feathers, we have wings. And then for Pi, there was hats, but hats have to be specific. And you shouldn't call it a hat unless it has like EEPROM and there's certain holes in a location.
Yeah, there's a lot of requirements for
Yeah.
hats. And I'll actually go through it. I have a couple here, and I can even dig out a shield.
Yeah.
But
And
I actually really like the idea of having a daughter card where
where
the name has to do with what it is. Like, I actually like that.
Yeah.
Some people are like, oh, why don't you just call it daughter card? But I actually,
Right.
I actually kind of like the custom name because it gives you context.
Here's the thing, and I'll just say it. So there was a bunch of cranky guys that when like Arduino came out, they're like, they should just call it daughter cards. And you know what? Like, that was a name for a different time, a different era. I'm glad that Shields came about. What's interesting though is NVIDIA owns a trademark for Shield. So if there's an NVIDIA Shield, believe it or not. So you can't just go around like trying to trademark Shield when it comes to computer stuff.
Yeah. So for example,
Yeah.
well, love trademarks, joy.
Yeah.
So this is a Arduino Leonardo, and then this is the shield, and basically it just matches up with the pins, and you plug it in, and you match up the pins properly, like so. And then this is a prototype I made of the Sim 808 shield. Our current version is blue, but this is the prototype. And then this adds cellular plus GPS to your Arduino, and the shield is like a standard format. It's kind of well known that which pins are power, which pins are data, and I like that. I like that it's a standard shape. There's this like little divot over here, and the mounting holes are in the same location. So when Beaglebone came out, they did capes. We only really did one cape. We did the proto cape. Beaglebone is not as popular, so it's it's a lot of effort to make custom hardware. So we didn't really design so much custom hardware for it. But then the Raspberry Pi came out, and this is like basically the Raspberry Pi. This is the B plus. I don't know if I have an A, but this was basically the size. And so we're like, okay, well you can make like the Pi TFT, and that would have this 2x20 connector that fits on the end here, and you plug this in. And it's a little bit like the Shield, except it's only 2x20.
Yeah.
But this adds a display. And then around the time that the B Plus came out, actually, because we had things before. This is for the original Raspberry Pi, which is slightly different. It had 2x13 pins. When the A Plus came out and the B Plus came out, so this form factor, they actually kind of said, okay, we're going to come up with a standard called a hat. And it's like hardware attached to top, HAT, hat. So this is like the hat shape, and this is a standard. They actually came up with like a standard shape. It has to be this dimension. It doesn't have to, but they recommend having these two cutouts so these cables can come out from the top, which is a nice thing. The pins have to be here, and there has to be 4 mounting holes, and there has to be this EEPROM. The EEPROM doesn't really get used so much. It's something that could be used to add device tree overlays. I'll be honest, most of the stuff that we do doesn't require loading a device tree. The Sense Hat does, and I think the Raspberry Pi display does. But we don't really use it. We just use it for identification, but it's a requirement. So that's like, 50-cent component is needed in order to make it like hat standard. But then the Raspberry Pi Zero came out, and then the Zero is smaller. So the hat's the same size as the A Plus, but it's quite bigger than the Zero. So you can compare. It's about twice as big. I think we did the math. It was like 40% larger. And so when this came out, there was sort of this like, okay, well, like, we want to make hardware that's small because it doesn't make sense to attach something this big to something this small. But it's no longer a hat because it isn't the official size. Like if I made a PCB that was this size, I couldn't call it a hat because, again, it doesn't match the standard. So there was kind of like mini hat, and then Pimeroni calls them fats. I think the P is for pico, or I don't know.
I think fat is like
just fat.
No, it's a bit like fat's like, oh, that's pretty fat. Like it's cool.
It is pretty fat, but maybe there would I don't know. I don't know if it stands for something. Is what I'm saying. It's a cool word. And then so we were talking today about should we make hardware customized for the Raspberry Pi Zero, and you said yes.
Yeah, because I feel like we've done such a good job with all of our code, all of our hardware for all of our sensors and all of our shield and all of our breakouts. This makes perfect sense because we do this for wings, we've done this for shields, and of course we've done this for breakouts. Of course we should do this for things for Pi. So it's not a hat, and we're not Pimeroni, so they're not fats. So
yeah, maybe the P stands for Pimeroni. Pirate hat.
I guess, but they're not hats.
Yeah.
So we're gonna call them bonnets.
Bonnets, because you said it was a small hat.
Yeah, it's a small hat.
And they're kind of cute. So yeah, you came up with the word bonnet, and I'm like, okay, that's sounds fine with me. So then I was like, all right, let's start making a couple designs. Now, what's interesting is, of course, like something like this, which is our stepper motor hat. You see, there's a lot of extra space here that isn't even really used. So it turns out that it actually is the electronics part is about the same size as the Pi Zero, and it's about the same size as a feather. It's about like mine. Hold on. So like my bin of feather wings. So for example, here's a servo driver. You can see it's not that much bigger, which is kind of nice. It gives me a sense of what you can do with the bonnet size, because if it fits on the feather, it'll fit on the bonnet. So like this 8x8 matrix, for example.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can tell like this would fit because if it fits on the small one, it fits on the large one.
Yeah.
And it's because I've already routed it. I might not even have to reroute the board.
We also have another platform that I'm not talking about yet that we're working on. So this all goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah, this is kind of cute. 8x16 LEDs. What else do we have?
Not out yet, don't I?
Little NeoPixels. You can do those. You can have a quad segment display. Maybe the Pi Zero would be timing something. I don't know. So I came back home and I opened up Eagle and I put on some typo negative because it's 20 years since October Rust came out. And do you want to look at some of the bonnets that I designed?
That's all I'm here for.
Okay, want to switch to
Yeah,
compy
splash
cam?
it up.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good. Nice work.
Yeah.
So I decided to do 3 to start, and they're actually derivatives. So 2 of them are derivatives of feather boards. So I started with the Charlie bonnet, and the Charlie bonnet is basically the Charlie. It's kind of like these Charlie Plex matrices that we made. I also made a feather wing that's 15 by 7. And I just love this driver chip. This is like my new favorite chip, the ISL 31, the IS31 FL3731. This is an I2C 16 by 9 Charlie Plex LED driver that does 8-bit LED PWMing, like per LED, which is unique. Yeah, what's
Can I
that?
put in a request?
Yeah.
I2C multiplexer.
Okay, that's interesting. For what?
Community of people in the chat rooms.
They think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
request I2C multiplexer.
Okay, yeah, that could be
Tell us why.
interesting. Yeah, tell us why, because it's like what sensors are you connecting when you need a multiplexer. Okay, so I took this design, and what was really neat is I actually kind of copy and pasted it and fit it in. And then I was inspired by the Pomeranian has a scroll fat, which has like some 7 by 15 LEDs using a different driver chip. But they did this funny idea of putting this white silk screen on behind it to help kind of spread out the light. And I was like, okay, I'll try that for a prototype. So this is 16 by 8 LEDs, and then the driver chip, and you can tell that this is not that much different than the Charlie wing. So that was kind of interesting. Hold on, let me open this up, and you can open this up. So I basically just I just copy and pasted this layout. I'm like so lazy. I just copy and pasted the layout. I just moved around the chips a little bit, and I changed. I took out the I2C pull-ups because of course you don't need those on the Raspberry Pi. And then this I could only fit 7 rows of LEDs, but this I could fit 8. So I added the missing ones. That's nice. 8 by 16 is a nice round binary number. So we're gonna try out this prototype, and so that'll be kind of fun. So you can do like a display, a little mini display.
Do you want to hear the reason why for the I2C thing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Indoor and outdoor copies of the same sensor, some of which can't be addressable.
Okay. Yeah. It's a possibility.
And one thing, just for the names, I have to say I didn't go over this, but someone mentioned in the chat. So I stayed away from Raspberry Beret, and I'll tell you why. Because Prince just died, and I didn't want to have that as a thing.
Yeah.
Because it's too easy, and sometimes with naming and branding, that's kind of like Prince's song.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that, and it's
fair.
Yeah. So anyways, so I purposely, because that's been in my head.
No, I mean he's amazing, and it would not make sense to honor him in that way.
Yeah. The thing is he put his music in a vault, and I feel like the situation around him passing away, I was a fan. I don't want to have a bunch of products called Raspberry Beret, and the song would be in my head all the time, and just no. So that's why I purposely blocked that one out of the things that I was thinking of.
Okay.
But bonnet I thought was kind of nice.
I like bonnet because it's kind of cute.
And also
it's a cute and small. It's a little mini hat.
Yeah, and we also saw They Might Be Giants, and there's a Birdhouse in Your Soul song, so they're still alive. So I feel like it's okay.
Okay. So the next one I did is the radio bonnet, and this one is an
Radio bonnet sounds cool.
Radio bonnet. I know radio. It's an RFM 69. So.
Oh, someone has a good question.
Yeah, what's up?
So you and I talked about this. Tynan, good question. Why redesign the wings for Pi Zero? Why not just make an adapter? Excellent question, because we talked about that.
That is actually an excellent question.
It sounds like, are the cameras on in here all the time?
I'll tell you, actually, we did think about this. And the reason I'm probably going to make a feather adapter, but there are some pin configuration things that make less sense. Like, for example, I'll tell you what, for this Charlie Plex, I could fit an extra layer of LEDs. And so I was like, I can make an adapter, but I actually really like the idea of having it 8 LEDs tall, because if you can fit that extra LED, you can do a full 8 most fonts require at least 8 pixels. You can get like a really good font with an 8-pixel font. So I was like, I actually wanted to do that. And also, the cost of the LEDs is so low that it would like be weird to have an extra PCB. And then for this one, I actually made it a change because I have the radio feather that I made, but I didn't fit a real-time clock in it. And in this one, I decided for the Raspberry Pi, because for the feather wing, it would be battery powered, and so it would probably be able to keep the time with its own like built-in battery. For the Raspberry Pi, they don't have a real-time clock, and you definitely like need to, if you're battery powering it, like you constantly have to reset the time. So I thought putting a real-time clock. I mean, I'm still thinking about the feather wing, whether I want to maybe later on add it. But with the Pi, I wanted to add a real-time clock, which the feather wing doesn't have. So it was a different enough design that I was like, okay, I'm going to actually
Someone said that
do something different.
radio bonnet sounds steampunk, and then someone said we can call this one Radiohead.
there is the library that in Arduino is called Radiohead. But
Yeah.
don't want to get sued. Okay, so this one is for the RFM69 and the LoRa radio, because I've actually been looking at the Thing Network, which is a worldwide volunteer LoRaWAN network, and they have code that allows you to use the SX1276, Semtech LoRa radio with a Raspberry Pi. So I just set up the pins to be compatible, work with that code, close enough, and you would be able to use this with a Raspberry Pi to make a LoRa gateway. It would be a single channel LoRa gateway, but maybe that's good enough for most people, and it would be pretty simple. Or you could use it with an RFM69 to make a network of sensors, and then I have a low-cost real-time clock, because the radio only takes up this much space with an antenna. You have a little sticking out SMA connector. Let me put the TDocu on so you can see that. So you can have your push-out antenna here, and then crystal real-time clock and a coin cell. Here's another thing that I thought about with the feather wings. The radio in particular has peak current of like 200 milliamps or so, and the feather wing, so the feathers have a pretty good 5-volt regulator, and they're not as sensitive, and so the wings don't have their own regulators on board. But for this, I wanted to have a separate 3-volt regulator, because the 3-volt regulator, I don't think it's really rated for us to take more than 100 milliamps out of, and I didn't want to push it. I prefer to take on the Raspberry Pi, I prefer to take the 5-volt power supply, which is like this raw USB. You can get 2 amps from it. It's a little dirtier, but you get as much current as you want, and then regulate it. So I added a regulator here to give me a nice, clean 3-volt power supply to the radio, and then to the real-time clock. So some design decisions were adapted, basically.
Okay, here's a couple things.
Yeah.
Someone said right call on the not naming it Raspberry Barrette. What about a Radiohead for the name? That'd be nice real-time clock on the Wink 1500, because then you can have the real-time synced with NTM. Real-time clock is really needed for people like me who can't hit a time server being behind a proxy.
Well, this is actually good for if you wanted to do the reason I put a real-time clock on here is not for when you're using this as a LoRaWAN gateway, because if you're using it as a gateway, this is going to be on Wi-Fi. If it's on Wi-Fi, you can just do an NTP lookup. And that's why I don't put a real-time clock on the Wink, because if you can connect to the internet, you just get NTP and like you're done, and you have perfect timing. This is for if you want to use the Raspberry Pi Zero as a low-cost LoRa node. And so this node would be sending data to your device. And so I thought for this it would be wise to have a real-time clock, because the node would probably be would be losing power and would probably reset more often. Mm-hmm. And so having a real-time clock would allow you to have time-stamped data if you want to do not connect to the network, get a bunch of data. Anyways, we'll see. I kind of had this feeling that a real-time clock would be handy with the radios. Maybe it won't be, but then I'll just not place these components and whatever. Okay. People can add it later if they
want. All right, what else you got?
Okay, so that's the second one, and then for the third one, I thought to make a speaker bonnet, and this one is like super simple. Basically, it's the we have these really cute chips that are I2S audio to 3-watt mono Class D out. So you can basically the Pi Zero, but even all the Raspberry Pis, they don't have really good audio output. The HDMI output is good because it's digital, but the Raspberry Pi analog output is just a PWM with a filter. It's okay. I mean, it's good enough for basic projects, but if you want to have anything with reasonable sound, you kind of have to go with a Class D amp. And so the Max 98357, which we made a little breakout for, and it took me forever to finish and wrap up, but when we did, it's a lovely I2S, so it's digital input, doesn't need a master clock, so it works great with the Raspberry Pi. You pipe in 24-bit audio, and it gives you speaker out. So it doesn't give you line level out, it just gives you speaker output. But you know what? Like for a lot of projects, you're not connecting it to another amplifier in this case, you connect it to speakers directly. So this can give you up to 3-watt out, and you have 2 of them. And I could probably find a chip that could do stereo Class D output, but actually I wasn't super successful. I mean, I'll take another look, but to me it was actually turned out to be simpler and cheaper to get 2 of these chips, because they're like $1 each, than get 1 chip. I couldn't find anything offhand that didn't require a master clock, because the I2S output from the Raspberry Pi doesn't have master clock. So you have to have a Class D, about 3 watts, because that's what you can get out of the 5-volt power. So you don't need an external power supply, and Class D output, and like filterless. So what's really nice about this is I just put a couple ferrites on here, and you just like pipe it out to speakers. So there's a little connector here for the speaker pack that we sell. We have what is this?
Want some more common questions?
One second. I'll just wrap this up.
Okay.
So I'll show this. So yeah, this is the I2S amplifier. So this is a single one, and what's nice is even, because you're paying for the cost of the whole board, putting 2 chips on there is not going to double the price, because it's like the assembly and everything is going to be the same. So probably be about like $10 total, and then the 3-watt. We have these pretty nice speakers. They're $2 each, and then hold on. Where's the dual? Yeah. So this actually really like these little speakers that are used. We use them with our HDMI audio decoders, but they're nice and close speakers. They're small, and they have a little JST connector. So I stuck a JST connector on here, and I think those are JST PH. So you'll be able to plug these in directly, and then basically have speaker output for your Raspberry Pi without needing to go from line out to an amplifier and power. It's all in one.
Okay, you want to hear some things?
Yeah, let's hear some things. I had a drink. I don't know where it went. Yeah.
So next up, I see SMA connector. Any chance of a UFL connector?
For the radio?
Yeah.
That's actually interesting. That it is actually a UFL. This is a really weird connector that we made.
Mm.
So if you look carefully, it's like a 3-in-1. It's an SMA connector, right angle board launch. So it's a board launch SMA, but then over here, this pad and these pads that come in,
that's cool.
That's a UFL. So you can use this as a UFL or SMA. And there's also a little hole here, you can use it as a wire antenna. So the customer basically chooses what they want. And we do this on the breakouts as well.
Yeah.
So you can see here, this is like edge
That's
launch
right.
SMA, or solder in a UFL or wire.
Yeah.
So here's the SMA, and then here is the UFL. So you can do any of the 3, or just a wire, because
Okay.
for the RFMs, it's like they're $2. Like you don't want to spend a lot of money getting an antenna and wiring it up. If you a piece of wire is fine. Sometimes you want to mount an enclosure, then you need UFL, and sometimes you want to connect an external antenna, and you have the space, you go with SMA.
Okay. Next up, can this be turned into a Wi-Fi bonnet?
it doesn't make. Here's the thing. I've actually looked into like adding Wi-Fi to the Pi Zero with a bonnet, like an add-on on top, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. It actually makes, but by the time, with all the pricing and the quality that you get, I think you're really better off going with a Wi-Fi dongle.
Yeah.
Like really, Wi-Fi works.
Okay.
You know?
Next up, add an FM receptor to the radio bonnet, and someone wants FM.
It doesn't do FM. It does FSK, to FSK. The RFM 69 can do a couple of I don't remember exactly which version does FSK. For FM radio, you would probably get a different chip. You'd get something like a little chip that does I2C radio reception or something, but then you don't have analog input. It's a little bit tougher to do FM reception. Ironically, probably the easiest way to do it is to get one of those RTL SDR dongles, because those can do FM reception, and you can do.
Those are fun.
Yeah, there's like command line utilities for FM.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. And then across the chat rooms, overwhelmingly, people say they really love these streams. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it would be fun. Could we talk about the differences between all these devices, and then if you're interested in the hat specification, you can go to Raspberry Pi, and it's under hats.
Yeah. Updated 3 days ago.
Oh, interesting. They use Bitbang I2C now. I wonder why they did that.
It just said, I just noticed right before you clicked it was just updated 3 days ago.
Documentation, yeah.
What was updated? Was it the BitBang stuff?
This is very weird.
Because it just says.
Yeah. Because. Oh, interesting. They use I2C over GPIO. That is interesting. So there's multiple I2C buses on the Raspberry Pi, and EE clock, EE DAT. Those are the pins that are used for the Pi hats to read the data. But it's all of this connected to an EEPROM, and they're like the simplest things to read. Mm-hmm. So you don't actually need to put your I2C pins. Like, it's a little bit of a waste to put the I2C pins on there, because you have like a full bus that you don't get to use for anything but this EEPROM, and you only read the EEPROM on boot. And again, it's like very basic, so it looks like they are switching the I2C bus from being hard used on those pins, where you actually it's like that bus is now used just for reading this EEPROM, to bit banging it. I2C bit bang is very easy, and doing it on a Pi is like super easy. Again, you only have to do it once on boot, and you're just reading the data from this EEPROM. You basically open up I2C address, OX50, and then slurp down the EEPROM data. You're never writing to it from the Pi. So what's interesting is they might end up demuxing the I2C device, that second one, from those two pins, and then giving access to users to it, because you can change what pins they're on. So those pins would end up just being bitbang, and then they'd move
to get a different what's the like a different kernel to do all this too?
It would be in the device tree overlay. So you wouldn't need a new kernel. You would change the overlay to change what pins. Because remember we did the I2S, and there's like multiple pins you can use. Like you can use this pin and that pin. You can tell it which set you want to use. So for that second I2C bus, there might be two other pins on the Raspberry Pi that you can use to connect to the secondary bus, and that would allow people to basically have, like, the person wanted two different I2C buses to compare. That would allow you to do so, because you could use the basic, the default one, which is I think I2C1, and then this would give you access to I2C0 if it really is changing for bitbang. Only Liam Fraser knows. But anyways, if you go to this documentation, it shows you the mechanical layouts. This is that specification for the hat. If your thing isn't this size, you can't call it a hat.
Okay.
So.
All right, and that's Sam, the only Bee in Your Bonnet Desk of Ladyada 30-minute edition Sunday.
Okay, little Pi history, Pi update, and then Pi future.
Here. Okay.
And then of course people tweet us if you have ideas for cool Pi bonnets, Pi hats. I'm down for it.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
See you
everybody.
It'll be an epic week as usual.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna get our beauty rest.
Yeah.
floating skull of Phil.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna get some figs.
Later, folks.
Later, folks.